Okay, so I'm doing the next session. That's why I'm coming up. And I am going to invite Jeroen Peeters, who is talking to Ansgar. So Jeroen Peeters, who's Director of Software Operations at Philips Medical, is going to join me on the stage. So you've learned this interaction, right? There is one person who gives the theory and then the other person who actually talks about the practice. So I'm going to be the theory part here. I'm going to share results of a survey that we ran the beginning of this year. You can see there's a board. Wait, this is it? No. Is it off? Wait, sorry. No, it's not. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to share our survey results, and then I'm going to have Philips again co-present with me. So, okay, there's this little gray box here. So we ran a survey in the beginning of the year, and we had numerous objectives, but the ones that I'm going to talk about today are. You can sort of hear this theme throughout the day, right? We're talking about transitioning, transforming, and one of the aspects that I wanted to check, or we wanted to check from a marketing perspective, was we called them equipment manufacturers or device manufacturers, but everyone you've met today is actually a company that has hardware as well as software. And we wanted to understand if there is a shift in their business models. Are they becoming more software-centric in their approach to the market from a revenue perspective? So this was the first question. Then we wanted to see, within those who had already transformed, already started changing their business model to be more around the software-based revenue, what were the challenges in implementing this transformation? And again, you've heard a bit about this from previous presenters. And then what are the benefits that they see or expect from this transition? So this is just a bit about the demographics. You've seen this before. There were 300 companies. You can see down the bottom, the people who we interviewed, you can see the various verticals. You can see the number of employees. It was a global survey. And all the organizations manufactured what we refer to as software-enabled hardware. So there was someone who owned the software element that was interviewed as well. Okay, so then I'll start with the poll because I want to then share the results. So the first question that we said was, have you considered or already implemented software-based revenue models? Okay, so I'm asking you the same so that we can then sort of see how that works with the survey. Yes, considered, currently implementing. Yes, already implemented. And no, this is not in our next 12-month strategy. So right, yes, and yes, yes, great. So no one says no. That's already very good because it is going to help me with the rest of my slides. Three. Okay, so this, I don't remember exactly if that added up to about 84, but it did look like it was in the high percentage, so this sort of correlates with what we found in our survey as well, that the majority of the companies that we surveyed were either in the process of implementing or had already implemented a software-based revenue model. And I have Jeroen here to tell us a bit about Philips Medical's transition and why you decided to do it. And just before I hand the clicker over to you, I want to share a little video by Philips. Let's see.
Healthcare has come a long way, but it's still not seamless. Systems don't always communicate. Clinicians can't always see the full picture. Patients can feel lost in the system. That's why Philips is on a mission to remove the limits of care, helping people manage both illness and health with clinical intelligence that helps to get it right the first time, bringing data, technology, and people together seamlessly. This is what drives us. It's what gets us out of our beds, to help get people out of these beds, healthier, happier, faster. Because today, health knows no bounds, and neither should healthcare. Innovation and you. Philips.
All right, perfect. Well, so first of all, everybody, hello. My name is Jeroen Peeters. You might notice that I'm a little bit warm, and that's because I'm unfortunately coming up with a bit of a fever, so I'm not at my best today. Apologies for that. The reason why I wanted to share this video with you is because as a company, we're making a dramatic shift in what we see as value for our customers. It's really about solving the dilemmas of health, right, in multiple stages. And I just want to run you through that. So as a company, so I think people will know Philips from a long history of a lighting industry, moving into consumer products, and then moving into the health system space where we started producing the larger MR, CT type of systems that you'd see in hospitals. And then eventually transitioning over into a lot of software products that drove the workflow within the hospitals and other customers that we have. And of course, we have a lot of B2C propositions, but what we've done now is really focused on, the future needs to be about, we need to really impact people's lives, right? Help them stay healthy. So what we did is we actually came up with something we call the Health Continuum. The Health Continuum actually helps us segment how we position propositions towards our customers, but also drives a lot of the business model that we see behind these products. So healthy living is about how do we help people stay healthy, right? So this is digital services combined with your watch, online reporting on how you're doing, coaching services to go along with that data, as an example. Prevention has a lot to do with if you're already dealing with certain health issues, to keep that under control. Diagnosis, obviously, when you are at a stage that you need to go to a doctor, how can we make that process as efficient as possible, right? Philips has the mission to impact 3 billion people's lives by 2025. A lot of people don't actually have access to healthcare, right? Which is driven from the fact that healthcare is still very expensive, and we need to get into a point that we can drive prevention, but we can also treat efficiently and effectively. So then you kind of go into the next stage of home care where at some point you get discharged from your treatment process and you want to be independent as quick as possible. You want to be able to recover in your own home with maybe the right services to help you be independent. So that is, I would say, kind of the continuum thinking that we have, and what's core to that is that we're driving a platform thinking, so that we're saying, okay, we have one platform that's going to connect with all our products, which is called the Health Suite Digital Platform and CDP Square. And these platforms are going to drive a lot of the data coming back from our products to help us provide these digital services to customers. So that's a big shift for us. It's a big shift in the type of products we do, right? We went from light bulbs to digital services, but it's also a big shift in what that demand puts on your internal organizations, right? So coming from a box moving business where we sold systems and products and shipping that out to customers and then providing service contracts, to now saying, wait a minute, we're going to do one integrated solution proposition for you. There's services in there, there's consulting in there, there is software in there, there's the system in there. So now we're actually tying ourselves as a company to be part of the, I would say, driving the result or the outcome for the customer, right? So hospitals will now come to us and say, I have a radiology wing and I need you to get 2% efficiency impact year on year. Those are the type of things that we'll be buying into. That means that you need to be very flexible in how you contract this stuff and how you actually supply these services to your customers.
So part of, you started talking about the continuum, right? Mm-hmm. And the change that you had to make. And the reason we have this slide up is because what you're going to tell us next is a bit about the drivers or the challenges. And I guess it depends where you look at them, right? What drove you to do this, or what were the challenges when you started implementing? And when we surveyed, these were the questions we asked. We said, okay, you saw 84% had already made that transition to become more software-centric. What were the top 3 challenges? And so actually 50% talked about hiring or retraining the workforce? And I guess more from, well, you've heard this throughout the day. Is it how sales approach the market? Is it how developers who used to develop hardware are now developing software? Is it, so almost every part, or operations people, right, who used to distribute or work on systems that managed inventory, shipping boxes versus software. So the recruitment was at the top. And then the next two, like every third company talked about the challenge of executing these new business models with legacy systems, going back to operations, right? The operation system that you have today when you're shipping a box, it can probably not cater as efficiently to a system that needs to not manage inventory when it's only software. So, or maybe you have to manage both, a hardware and a software. And then they needed a central strategy, right, versus organic evolution. And I think Vince discussed this as well, right? These feudal wars and how things evolve from within. And so can you shed some light on some of the drivers and challenges that you experienced?
Absolutely. And this is, I think the comment actually came here in front with the lady in the red shirt, which is excellent, about NPI, right? Because honestly, this is a symptom that we're doing these transformation programs. And the symptom is that we now need to make this huge leap in the way we set up our organization. However, if we were actually capable of doing NPI in a way that we would be able to develop these capabilities along with how we develop our solutions, we would actually make much more iterative steps than we're doing now and making these big leaps, right? But we were in that situation as well. Our NPI process did not foresee in that, which meant that, yes, we needed a transformation program. And there's 2 transformation programs ongoing at Philips today. The overall Accelerate, which is really about process harmonization. So, I mean, Philips, like many companies, comes from a lot of acquisitions. We know that we need to become more efficient, so we're driving a lot of process harmonization. And on top of that, the software and services transformation program that I'm part of was put in place to actually do the differentiation on top of those harmonized processes that we need for the software and services business models. So our new propositions are developing faster than we can cope with. That's the reason why basically we put the transformation program into place to create a funnel where we could actually bring these propositions in cross roadmaps of business groups that we have in Philips. And we have multiple business groups with multiple business units with multiple business lines. So you can imagine, let's say, how fast this becomes when you actually get into trying to uncover the demand that's out there, right, for our business capabilities. Another key driver is, of course, harmonization of the customer experience. In the end, customers don't want to have 2 different answers when they're dealing with 2 different units within Philips. They don't want that experience from a process perspective, but they also don't want that experience from commercial models, right? So one could deal with subscriptions, the other couldn't. One could deal with pay-per-use, the other couldn't. That's a strange message to send. And that's something that we really improve to make sure that we have one way of driving those commercial models, one way of driving the delivery models to our customers. So harmonization is a big deal. It also means that, unfortunately, although people don't like this, you do have to centralize how you build these capabilities. Because you can try as individual businesses to do this, and you will end up with, again, another differentiating set, maybe an advanced set, but a differentiating set of capabilities, which, unfortunately, is not conducive to the customer experience again. I think what's key is that if you really look at a business model, it is quote to cash, and for us, quote to cash includes service. So it's really, and it actually even includes opportunity management, but the transformation program was set up in a way that all the elements that we're touching from the business model would be covered in one program. So our coding solutions, our contract lifecycle management environment and processes, how we do order management, fulfillment, the whole financial, revenue and cost recognition, the billing, and how service is provided and the capabilities we need there. So the transformation is really about We always talk about capabilities, which means process, system, and something that's trainable, and people, right? So that you have the right people in place to actually execute. So to the point of, hiring or retraining, that's a big deal. And it's even harder because you cannot just pick somebody from Microsoft and dump them in a company that, has a rich history of being a product business or a system business, because they will get lost in the implications of having these businesses that need to be integrated. So you have to be very careful in how you select the people, because these businesses don't exist in silos. If we sell a solution, again, it's software, it's a service, it's consulting, it is a system. It's one contract with the customer. So that's a really important part for us. I think overall, what's really key is the transformation is run with very key sponsorship, right? So this is really board level engagement, right? So we would not be able to do what we do without having our CIO and COO on the steerco of our transformation program. Why? Because I think somebody said politically charged, has a lot of impact, and you're going to touch the operating model of an organization. Business leaders are dealing with really hard targets, right, to hit every year, every quarter, every month. This does not, on their radar, this is like a second thing that they need to deal with next to that. And we need to make sure that we keep driving that priority. Although they all want these new propositions, it's still a challenge to run the existing business and still prioritize for the future businesses. I think one of the interesting things that Ray Wang mentioned yesterday in the presentation about creating these silo businesses, we've been through that as well. So we've done the thing where we said, we don't want to deal with this bigger Philips. Let's create a niche thing that exists, hidden away somewhere that we can just, silently execute, start bringing to market. But then it fails because, you can't invoice, you can't provide the same level of service, you can't do all these things. So it's really difficult, right? There's a lot of different demand coming in from a lot of different maturity of products and services. And you really need to find a way to create a funnel where you can bring all this demand together. So that was a very key thing for us, having that history of coming from this product business. We needed the right capabilities centrally to actually bring that together. So that was a key driver for us, for sure. Key lessons learned, I think I mentioned already, it's MPI++, right? I don't know, people, has anybody done NPI projects here in this room? Just raise your hand real quick. Excellent, okay. I think there should be a rule in every company. Everybody that ever worked anywhere should have done an MPI project. Why? Because you'll actually know what it means.
Defining MPI, please.
So let's say it's basically product lifecycle management. So there's the ideation phase, right, where somebody says, wouldn't it be cool if we could do X, Y, Z? And then there's the implementation, the phase out. And what it means is that if I need to bring a product to my customer, all the business capabilities, all the product development, but also the capabilities of my company need to be set up to actually deliver this product to my customer, to bring that customer experience that I foresaw to have. And so that's MPI, it's new product introductions. So if you can get that working very well, you can probably avoid these big transformations altogether, but we're not there yet. So. Converging demand, big deal. Do it centrally. Don't let them do this divergent thing. Another comment to that is, the business needs to drive the transformation. So much too often I see these examples where IT is running the transformation because it's called digital transformation, and a lot of it's IT systems. Yeah, that's true. But IT doesn't have, let's say, the power within the organization generally, so there are exceptions, but generally, to actually drive the business to make decisions on harmonization and standardization. So it really needs to be a business-driven and a process-driven approach to get the right impact. I would really say start small. You can really overload this thing, especially if you look at the scope that we had, right? Quote to cash, it's huge. we really started with the transactional ability. So that meant I can book an order, I can book a contract, I can bill it in a way that, I can run the business, I know what the performance is financially, it works well, and then you start building off of that in the, let's say, the differentiating capabilities. Because if you don't get the foundation in place, you don't start bolting on these capabilities, you'll just overload yourself with way too much. Process-driven, I guess to the point what I just said about businesses and how they're dealing with conflicting priorities, they really have stringent targets for sales, right? They're not focused on this future stuff. And it's essential that key leadership in the organization makes it a priority for these business leaders, that are responsible for these P&Ls to put time and resources to do this. If it's a hobby, it's not going to happen. It will not happen. Trust me. If it's not in somebody's personal objectives to make it a success, they will show up for the first meeting. They might show up for the second meeting. Then they start missing out a few, and then they show up at the last one, right, to then say, that's not what I wanted. So that's absolutely what you need to avoid. So whatever you do, try to make sure that's in there. We learned that the hard way, by the way. So executive sponsorship, right? Our steerco is really, so we have our global COO and CEO in there. Every business has their own CEO in Philips, so it's a vast network of executives. But I think it went very well to have them engaged, have them involved, help us drive those priorities, have them drive the target settings. It's still a challenge. There was still businesses where that went well, businesses where that was more difficult. It's a process. You have to learn how to set these priorities because not everybody initially realizes what the impact is, right, of really making a business model shift. So that's a big deal. I think the last thing that it's not on here, but that I'd like to give away is, when your organization comes from a history of a different type of product, you see that there's actually a gap between product management that's developing all this new stuff and the people that have to operate it, right? Because they don't understand each other, because they're coming from two entirely different worlds, right? We're talking about IoT and software. If you talk to somebody that used to run supply chain for a box moving business and you start talking about IoT and software and shipping it online and digitally, and it goes blank, right? And that's normal. It's very logical. So coach them, help them be the proper receiving organization. Product management usually gets very creative, and the receiving organization needs help to make that change. So what we did in our transformation program is we added a lot of experts that would help them, convert what it is that they need to what the operational impact would be. So that's really, don't make it a fight in the company, right? Make it a good discussion and facilitate that, because that will just get you a whole lot further than letting that process continue. That's what I wanted to share on this one.
Okay, so because it was a survey and I had the option to ask people who have already started a change what their benefits were. So this is what we said. We said, okay, for those of you who have transformed and have overcome the challenges, what were the benefits that your companies saw? So I like the first one, driving diversity in hardware with software features. And Jeroen and I were talking about what this means. So I think that the fact that 86% of companies that had moved to software-based revenue models have already seen this ability, I think is a great statistic, right? Absolutely. And we're going to talk about how this is something that you're hoping to see from your transition. Remote feature upgrades, again, these are all the benefits of again, having a software-centric approach. This enables these capabilities. Improved customer experience. You had a whole session about customer experience, so again, it seems to be obvious, but I guess maybe after you go through a day of talking about this and then you see that this is actually something that we see in the market as well, and also being able to flexibly adapt to market change. You've heard about this a lot during the day, being a flexible type of company that can adapt easier to customer demands. And you heard how in 10 years, requirements from the market, pricing models are changing all the time. Customers want to consume differently. So having that ability, again, was one of the benefits. And so, Jeroen, you were telling us about the transformation that Philips are going through. I know you haven't implemented this to the extent where you can tell me what the benefits are, but maybe you can share what the expected benefits are.
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the main things is we're looking for things to actually help us drive recurring revenue, because recurring revenue actually drives better product innovation, and it drives a better customer experience, right? Because customers aren't out there to buy machines, right? That's not their interest. We're trying to do subscriptions on services that actually will continue to provide value that we can morph over time. And that is very important to us, and it's very important to customers because, again, financially for them, it's also very unattractive. The other part is, driving performance on this type of business versus the box moving business is entirely different, right? Our KPI set that we would see for this solution and software and services business is a very different set that drives operations versus what we would see for the traditional supply chain and service processes. So having that ability to steer the business in a better way, that is a key benefit to us. Because for a long time we were still using the old metrics, struggling to actually be able to understand the performance of the business, understand the performance of contracts on a contract by contract level, tied to what the customer experience is and customer satisfaction is, and of course how do you drive retention when you start moving to these recurring models. So these were all things that were new, right? New ways of steering a business, new ways of driving the customer satisfaction. So that's a big thing for us. That is something that we expect to see already in the early deployments now, where we're really doing the transactional piece already. A lot of the financial information is now available. So that's a big step for us. And the other part is that when you come from that history of box moving and then service, you actually see the organization has this split, right? So you ship the box, and there's a different group of people that does the service. Now, that is something that we really need to move away from, because in the end, the customer doesn't care that in our company there's two silos, right, that deal with this. What they want to know is, I want one person to talk to, right, about my contract. I want to know what's going on. I want to know what I'm still entitled to. I want to know how the performance is doing, and we need to integrate that end to end. So the orchestration of how we actually deliver to our customers, but also manage the performance and interact with the customer, needs to be integrated. So there is no more supply chain service. There is one orchestration layer that we'll put into place organizationally to actually support the customer. Big deal. That's a big deal to the customer. It's a big deal for us, because now we have oversight in the entire execution of it. That includes the consulting, it includes the lifecycle services, it includes the software delivery, it includes all these different delivery engines that we have in actually fulfilling all the entitlements. We actually, the orchestration is tied to a more conceptual view of entitlements. So we don't talk about entitlements only from a software monetization perspective and features and all that. Entitlements is much broader, right? It can be consulting hours, it can be spare parts entitlements, it can be software feature entitlements, it can be many different things. And we need to have one overview. It cannot be that we have to find this in different places. So key benefit is speed for the customer, oversight, and driving that engagement from one place and not 12 places. So those are some of the key benefits that we expect on short term. This will expand as we move forward. We're far from done. This is really a journey. We've been in it now for 2.5, 3 years. And because the business models are actually morphing or evolving as we're doing the program, you have to be very agile. You have to adapt to these changing requirements, because generally these new models are not done and dusted, right? They're thoughts, their concepts. They take existing products. What if we mash it together like this, and then package it like that? And the pricing sometimes needs to be figured out. The way they want to manage what a subscription means to a customer. These are all variables that are still in play while we're already building the capability, and we need to be able to respond to that rapidly. Yeah, so that's kind of the benefits part.
Thank you, Jeroen. Any questions for Jeroen? Yeah? Oh, wow, okay. I think, do we have a mic? Here, thank you.
You mentioned that you guys basically started small in your building, so you started with a specific transactional section. Did you do an end-to-end roadmap and then decide to break that down by functionality and say, okay, this is what it's going to look like to get from where we are to where we ultimately want to be, and we want to start with this process and focus on that? Or are you doing it piecemeal? And so we want to do transactional first, and then maybe we'll try back end, and then because of your particular business?
Yeah, good question. So one of the KPIs of the transformation program was time to market for the businesses, right? So if that wasn't our key KPI, I would have chosen to go for more of the roadmap approach and then hack it up. But what we did is most business value first, and then start small, and then naturally, if you can't transact a business, then there's not much to talk about. So that was the first step that we took, and then we started breaking it up based on business cases around capabilities converged from multiple businesses together. So that's kind of how we phased it. It's hard, by the way, because that means that architecturally, from a process and system perspective, you do have to be able to look ahead to some extent, and sometimes it's 3 steps forward, 1 step back, and that was okay. That was accepted because the time to market again was the key KPI.
Okay, over there, but you don't have to. Thank you. I'll try and, yeah. Thanks, Jan. I think over there.
We need a drone with a mic.
I know. Oh, that's the next one.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Great. Great insights on your transformation journey. Just wondering if you could speak for a second to how much time and effort you have to spend or have had to spend working with executives and C-suite kind of people on explaining things and selling them and getting their support, as well as breaking down silos within the organization.
A lot. And continuously. So it wasn't let's present this a few times and then everybody's happy with it. It's continuous engagement. And try to take things as they come, because you cannot oversee everything. I guess the main topic that was always on the agenda is the buy-in and the priorities. So how do we make decisions between prioritizing one business over another? And you can't only look at the financial impact. Sometimes there's a strategic impact that has to go first. And that requires continuous discussion about priorities. It requires continuous discussion about, do we need to change our approach? So it's endless. It's always there. It's always there. And it's a big part. You cannot overinvest in doing that. And I'm not kidding if I would say, if you spend 30% of your time doing that, you're probably okay. So that's, it's a big part. Does that answer the question? Okay.
Any other questions for Jeroen? Yeah?
Just
Vince?
a quick follow-up. Geography.
Right.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up to start small. What was your geography?
Well, so, eventually it has to be rolled out global. But you always pick a pilot market that you go for. Initially, we went for United Kingdom and Ireland. And now, let's say the second wave of capability and deployment is North America. But of course, in the end, whatever we build needs to be built for something that you can deploy globally. So you take a pilot, you test it out, you see how it goes. There's always some localization aspect, right, that needs to happen. It's not just language, right? It's legal, it's all sorts of things. And that's what you deal with when you start doing the mass deployments. But UK and I and North America were our first pilots. UK and I because it was contained, North America because it's our biggest market.
Any more questions for you before we... Oh, yep, over there. I guess one last question. Thanks, Dan. We're getting you prepped. We're getting you prepped for your next session.
So thanks. This was a great presentation. I appreciate it. Could you speak to the structure of the transformational team? Because this is a cross-functional activity, right? This is not one team driving this, and there are many aspects. How is the team structured, and how is it still structured?
Okay, so high level, the way it works is in Philips, you have a business transformation organization. So there's actually a whole group of people that drive business transformations as kind of, let's say, program managers, right, that do this. And then next to that is me or another BPO, right, that's actually responsible for the design of the capabilities that we deploy. So the business transformation person actually takes responsibility for most of the engagement and getting the roadmap together and the deployment commitments. I took the responsibility to drive the right design so that whatever we deploy is in line with what the market's need. Now, from a function perspective, there is IT solution architecture, there is enterprise information management. We had quality and regulatory because we're a regulated company, of course. We had compliance domains involved. We had business process experts that reported to me in there. And what we did is we created multifunctional teams. So the Scrum teams were not IT Scrum teams. There were developers there, business process experts, somebody from EIM. And that meant that now they took responsibility for the entire outcome of something that's executable in a market. Because the challenge is when you actually break it all up in functions, nobody feels responsible for the end product, right? And the best way to do it is say, okay, you're one team. The output is something usable, right? So that means it's trainable, there's a process documented, the data management is done, there's an architecture, somebody building it, and it's hard. It's really hard to do it that way because nobody's used to doing it. And we have somebody here in the room that knows all about that. And it's a shift, but once you get into that, I mean, we saw a huge shift in taking accountability for the end product. So that was kind of our structure. What we did is we actually applied scaled agile. So we took away all the project managers and all the stuff. So we had Scrum teams, multidisciplinary Scrum teams. We had one portfolio, and that was the way we structured it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions for you? Wait, one more from Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Okay, Jan, one last one.
We need to get him Nikes.
Yes, to get him some running shoes.
Yeah.
I really liked your term of process harmonization. What is the appreciation at the C-level for process versus looking at it as the word harmonization has a very positive message to it, but process is often viewed as bureaucracy.
Right.
How does the C-level at Philips view process, and did this transformation do anything to change that view?
No, that's a very good question. So we were actually extremely lucky with our CEO. So Frans van Houten, actually in a meeting once said where all the BPOs were on a call, he said, guys, I gave you the keys to the house. And that was his way of saying, this is a process-driven company. We want predictable outcomes. We want harmonization. We want customer experience that lines up across the businesses. And he really believed in that. Now, I can imagine that if you don't have a CEO that thinks about it that way, usually the next best person is the COO because he has to deal with all the, the nightmares of differentiation. But we were just very lucky in that, to have that support. Now, the businesses individually, though, weren't all that excited about the fact that now they had to adopt this standard process But that's a process that you go through. There's indeed a perception of bureaucracy. There's a perception of, this is just paperwork. But once they start seeing that if you address problems by, let's say, a process-driven way of having the discussion, you get better outcomes. And that, over time, drives acceptance and drives. But the first discussions are hard. Nobody wants to look at a flow chart. Basically, everybody wants to talk about tools. Great, can I put Model N in? Excellent, cool. Can I have Gemalto? Sounds great. Then I can replace Excel with SAP. Everybody loves to talk about tools. Nobody wants to talk about the process. But that changes over time. Once they start seeing the effect of that, it will change.
Thank you, Jeroen. One last question, or are we good? Thank you very much, Jeroen, for sharing with Philip's story.